Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Saturday evening to you all. Hope you guys are doing well out there tonight and having yourselves a great weekend out there so far. I know I've not been with you guys the last couple time frames that I normally make a video, which was this morning and then yesterday evening. Very busy weekend, and it's still got a lot to do with tomorrow with moving my mom from one place to the other, at least helping. And today I ran a what we call a dam to dam here in South Carolina, where it's basically a relay where you run from the Lake Murray Dam all the way to the Greenwood Dam. So I was doing that all day. That's why I wasn't with you guys this morning. But here with you guys this evening, it's going to be a pretty big update. If you notice, low energy. I'm just physically tired, from running the relay like anybody would be. But definitely want to get this video out there because there's a lot of good information to talk about. As we get into next week, there's going to be some active weather. One of the most significant winter storms of the winter season for certain areas, for a lot of areas actually, will happen probably this coming work week. And then we have another severe weather event, which is connected to the same system. And then while we have all this going on, we have record heat that's going to really build in the later part of this coming work week. And I'm talking about 80s well into the Carolinas, guys, deep into the 80s, 90s in Florida, which is pretty uncommon for Florida in February. I know you guys, it's not uncommon to get into the 80s, but 90s is getting pretty warm for Florida standards, even in February. So we're going to talk about all. There's going to be three main topics. We'll talk about winter weather first, what we know about the severe weather threat, which has a high ceiling, and we'll talk about why. Well, we'll talk about what we know, and then we'll talk about the heat and how hot we can get in portions of the southeast. So if you folks have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. Appreciate the ongoing support and consistent support from the regular viewers, and any new viewers, we welcome you. It's a family type atmosphere here for sure. So if you guys got anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put it in the comments below so I can pray over them, and so other people can do so too. So we're going to jump right into this, guys. We're going to take a look at the European. We're going to kind of zoom into some of these areas also and really talk about what the national blend of all models is showing as far as snowfall totals and ice, because I think icing is going to be a big issue with this too. So we're going to talk about what we know. We'll go over the latest European, then the GFS. Latest European, you're going to have a little clipper system. And I'll preview this. There's a lot of cold air out there, but it's all bottled up to the north, and you got a lot of warm air bottled up to the south, and that's due to the influence of this ridging in place, which normally brings above average temperatures. So there's a lot of cold air here on top, so you get a lot of moisture, which we're about to this week. You're going to set up the stage for a major winter storm. But first off, Monday afternoon, evening, we'll have a little clipper that flies through the Great Lakes region. This might deliver some interior northeast snow. And the northeast also, you guys could potentially, I'll show you what I'm talking about. Don't want to get ahead of myself, but here you go. We're starting to get into late Tuesday, and then snow, moderate to maybe heavy at times. Snow begins to overspread the Dakotas into Minnesota, maybe northern portions of Iowa, begins to move into Wisconsin. By the time we're getting into the wee hours in the morning this Wednesday of the 22nd, heavy snow too showing up here with the darker blues right here. I know it's kind of hard to see on your screen, but what's causing this is a ton of moisture building up across the middle of the country, and overrunning occurs with this Arctic air setting up here to the north. Low pressure develops to the south, moisture all on the front end of this, and then this will set the stage for severe weather down here, which we won't get too ahead of ourselves right here. But this is going to be a big rocky snowstorm too. I'm not just going to talk about just the upper Midwest and the Great Lakes region, which I tend to talk mainly about when it comes to the weather I talk about in general when it comes to this, to the central and eastern U.S. But, this is going to be a big storm potentially for Wyoming, Montana, Colorado, and more people further to the west. But as we keep going, there's going to be a first wave of snow that moves through overnight Tuesday into Wednesday morning. This will move all the way into Michigan. And then low pressure really gets going. And look at this. It is snowing from the Rockies all the way to New York State in I doubt it's going to be connected, but it could be a connected area of frozen precipitation as we're getting into our Wednesday. Check it out. It's snowing like crazy back here in western Nebraska, back here in Denver, Colorado. It's snowing in South North Dakota, Wyoming, Montana. It's snowing in southern Minnesota, Wisconsin. And look at all the pink you see. That is ice. The orange is sleet. I don't focus too much on the sleet, but the pink is ice. That's freezing rain. So we'll zoom into that. But look at it. You got a freezing rain event ongoing, and maybe southern sections basically the certain areas of the Midwest, certain areas of the Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, but this continues. And then look here. I mean, you got frozen precipitation moving into the Northeast overnight Wednesday night into Thursday morning. And then, you got another low pressure that redevelops over this boundary right here where the storm track is just cruising. Heavy snow breaks continues to just reamp itself over the Dakotas, Minnesota. I think big cities like Minneapolis could be in for a significant snowstorm. Milwaukee, you guys could be in for something significant again, but it could be a mixed bag. But we don't know the exact details of this yet. But, I mean, look at this. This brings frozen precipitation into the Northeast, like Boston. Not quite the New York City too warm, but, I mean, you stop it right here. Let's go one more frame. This is Thursday morning. It's pouring, snowing in Minnesota. You got a winter storm, a kind of a mixed bag of precipitation here in these certain areas in the Midwest and the Great Lakes, but it's snowing up here in northern Michigan, northern Wisconsin, and this will be a significant winter storm for southeast Canada. Significant mixed bag winter storm for the Northeast likely, especially as we get into the mid to later part of the week, and then this moves out. This big winter storm for Maine. And I know I'm just kind of talking not very detailed. I'm going to get as detailed as I can in this, but in general, this is a huge event, and there's an Arctic boundary setting up, and anywhere where there is a boundary, that's normally where the low pressure rides. And then you get another area as we get into Friday morning that rides through the Northeast. And then if I was to keep this going, check this out, the pattern isn't done. It's a weird kind of flow out here. You got a ridge bubbling up here, but Arctic air up here. So you get another system, and there's cold air kind of potentially locked into the Northeast. This is getting into around this time next weekend. Another system flows through, and this could potentially bring winter weather closer to the I-95 corridor. You look up here in the Northeast, that flies through, a little bit more cold air dips in, and then look, you get 9-10 days out, pretty far out, guys, for you folks in the Mid-Atlantic. But, this delivers, a winter weather event for the Mid-Atlantic. Okay, and it's wild how on track both models are. So, are you going to try to make up for lost ground for folks in the Northeast Mid-Atlantic? We'll see what happens. But here we go. Same thing with the GFS. It's the same kind of setup. We're getting into Wednesday morning. You got a stripe of snow all the way from the Rockies, all the in the Pacific Northwest, basically all the way into the Great Lakes region, and then this lightens up and then it reamps itself. But look at this pink. I mean, we're going to see how far north this trends. If this low pressure trends a little south and cold air further south, you might be in for more icing in the Ohio Valley. But if you're certainly in northern portions of Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio, you need to really pay attention to this because this could tweak back and forth. But I really think up here is almost a lock for a major winter storm, guys. And you keep this going, and I would say the GFS is a little bit further north in general. Maybe not as much precipitation, but I mean, for example, for you folks in Boston, that's, overnight Wednesday and the Thursday morning, this brings just a wintry mess of sleet, snow, freezing rain for you guys. So for Boston, this could potentially be your biggest winter storm of the year. Potentially. Okay? Long-lasting event for sure, guys. A little bit closer to for you folks in the Ohio Valley and surrounding regions. Here it is. A little area of snow breaks out, like I said, overnight, Tuesday night and Wednesday morning across, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and into Michigan. As you get into Wednesday afternoon, there might be some kind of break, and then a low pressure pops off, rides into this Arctic air, and it's just going to be waves of frozen precipitation. You'll stop this. This is in the middle of the night, Wednesday night into Thursday morning of the 23rd. Pouring snow in Minnesota, Minneapolis. You have freezing rain getting dangerously close to Chicago. This is all freezing rain, just a wintry mix for Milwaukee, northern. Yeah. So you see this, guys. This is a corridor of nasty ice showing up. Not only are we going to get significant snow up here, but nasty ice too, especially as we're getting into the middle to later part of this work week. And this continues. And then it heads on out, and I think you finally clear completely out. Well, you could have another system. I mean, here it is. So there's a lot going on, and the timing is going to be everywhere. I have a feeling it's going to be a week of some pretty long videos, but we're going to figure it out for you folks. But look at the Northeast. I mean, here comes this system off the European. Boston, you guys start off as snow, potentially. The timing is going to be everywhere. We don't know anything for sure. But you guys start off as snow, maybe as early as sometime late Wednesday night of this coming work week. Look at all this freezing rain for like Binghamton, Buffalo, corridor of ice showing up here. heavy snow into the interior Northeast, and then yeah, this just turns into a wintry mess for New England, maybe even southern parts of southern New England. And this is a major winter storm for the interior Northeast. But low pressure is not favorable for you folks down here in Philadelphia, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., and even New York City. It's just not. But this is going to be a major winter storm for you folks, for especially Vermont, New Hampshire, northern New York State, pretty much all of Maine. This is going to be significant. And there could be a lot of nasty icing mixing in. This is what it could look like. Maybe Thursday midday, you keep this going, and then it's still going. All the way until about the start of next weekend. So how much snow can we see, guys? We'll flip through this. This is between now and basically next Sunday morning. So basically between now and the next week. I mean, you got multiple feet of snow in the Yellowstone National Park, Montana. Almost the entire state is going to get accumulating snow, especially the higher elevations. And then southern Montana, Wyoming, the entire state accumulating snow. Denver, I think you'll get into several inches of snow. I do, especially since you're on kind of the northern half of Colorado. But look at this in South Dakota. Anywhere from 8 to as much as maybe 16 inches of snow. Especially, I think, the further you work into eastern Colorado, the more snow you can get. For you folks in Nebraska, I think the northern half of the state sees most of the snow. But Omaha, you would need this to trend a little bit more further south. Icing with this, the icing's not going to be a big problem in this part of the country. It's going to really just be the snow. But if we go over to, I'm going to do this on the fly, guys. We go over to the north central U.S. And this moves us a little bit further. But this shows Minnesota. Look at Minneapolis. Look at the bullseye right over Minneapolis. If you read the National Weather Service discussion, they're saying that 2 feet of snow is possible. I think this will be the biggest snowstorm in Minneapolis that they've seen in quite some time. Okay, already honking the horn at this. That this is, got the hiccups. This is going to be rather significant. The blend of all models shows 1.5 feet, almost 2 feet of snow for you guys. So it's going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot. Northern Iowa, it's going to be kind of a battleground. I think this is when ice really gets into the picture. I mean, look at Iowa, you're starting to see a lot of ice, a solid glaze mixing with some of the snow totals. So, but this is when you're really going to see the icing as we move a little bit further. And let's look at here we go. This is a wider view here, but look at Wisconsin up here, especially I would say the northern 2/3 of Wisconsin. Feet of snow in northern Wisconsin. For my folks up here in the UP of Michigan that faithfully view, and I appreciate you guys. Even in Wisconsin, I got quite a few people who view. This is going to potentially be your biggest snowstorm of the year. It's going to be a long duration event. It's going to be a lot, especially the northern 2/3 of Wisconsin into the UP of Michigan and just northern Michigan in general. But I know you're looking down here and you're not seeing a lot of snow here. That is because this could be a lot of ice. And if the blend of all models is already showing 1/10 of an inch to 2/10 of an inch of ice here in southern Michigan, which I think could be the corridor of some of the worst ice, then I think it's going to uptrend. But this is a solid look for, I think someone's going to get ice storm criteria ice. I think this is going to be quite significant for someone in here. So we go up here to the northeast throughout the next week. Maine and Vermont, New Hampshire, and northern sections of New York State will be the jackpot area. But look, 4.5 inches, 4 to 5 inches of snow showing up in Boston. It's possible. There's going to be some sleet mixing in with all this too that I'm discussing. But big snowstorm coming. I really think it is. Big winter storm. And look at all this ice showing up in New York State, even Pennsylvania. There's a lot of ice mixing this. Once this switches to dark pink, that is 1/10 of an inch of ice or more. That's when you start to get into some issues. So it's going to be a sleet, icy mix for a lot of people. So I really think this is going to be the first of a couple storms that are going to impact the Northeast. As maybe some cold air gets entrenched. But, I mean, for example, you go back and look at the GFS. And the GFS shows that same second system. Here comes the second system into this weekend that delivers snow for a little bit areas further south. Shows Pittsburgh some love, Cleveland. This should bring snow as far south as Baltimore, Philadelphia. Brings snow and a winter weather event for New York City into southern New England. All snow for Boston. And then you get another one the last couple of days of February, which is an unreliable time frame. But, man, it's wild. So I think the February might end with a bang as far as areas further north. I'm not talking about for us folks in the southeast or anything like that. But let's talk about this severe weather. And guys, I'll tell you right at the dot, there's not much to talk on it because we need to get closer to it when we will be closer to it here in the next 48 hours. But there's a 15% risk issued. They have some pretty high confidence that some kind of severe weather is going to happen here. It's a 15% risk of severe weather within 25 miles in any given location. And yeah, it's going to be kind of a weird mode. Trying to figure this one out. One thing we know is when we have surface lows fly across this boundary, which they will be doing, this introduces the opportunity for moist air to rise out the Gulf of Mexico, get pulled out the south, northward into the Gulf of Mexico. So, as we're getting into Monday, moist air quickly surges in the southeast Texas, basically all the Gulf states, especially Louisiana, especially the western areas of the deep south. And we get into Tuesday morning, you have a pretty large area of moist air stretching from southeast Texas all the way to almost South Carolina. And then we build into Wednesday, and you have a massive warm sector all the way up into this boundary up here. So, it's pretty wild. You have dew points in the 60s in Missouri and a winter storm going on probably in northern Iowa. So that's not, too much of a difference of a geographical location. It really isn't. And it really just tells you how much moist air is overlapping into this colder air. It really solidifies that, considering the fact of how close this really moist air is. But you see these dew points well into the 60s, some 70s down here. That tells you that Wednesday is going to be a big day, and that is what, hold on. Yes, it's for Wednesday. I was thinking, what is it for Tuesday? But Wednesday is going to be the day. Dew points rise into this area well into the 60s, probably some low 70s. So you got the moist air that we talk about that you need. But one thing that I'm really worried about is there is going to be a massive wind field with this. You're going to get a 60, 70, maybe 80 knot low-level jet in areas. 60 to 70 is almost looking guaranteed. These are going to mix the surface to the surface. So I really think you're going to have some kind of storm mode that's going to favor something linear, which means it's probably going to be some kind of massive line of storms with the potential for some prefrontal renegade supercells out in front of it. If you get any prefrontal supercells in this environment that's going to be here next Wednesday, or this coming Wednesday, you are going to have tornadoes. I really think you are. But regardless, I think the wind threat is going to be big with this system Wednesday. But there will be a tornado threat too. So this is a pretty stout low-level jet. Wind field, the kinematics is going to be elevated like crazy. It's just going to be the fact that there's going to be absolutely no cap in place. It's looking like. So I think you're going to have a very messy storm mode. But of course, we don't know that for sure yet. But that's what some of the soundings are showing for this. But, you look at the European and what this could look like. Here it's showing basically like a line of storms blasting through Arkansas Wednesday midday into the afternoon, making it into the mid-south. But, you see these little splotches of yellow right here. This tells me that you could have some renegade cells. So we'll talk more on this when we know. I know that's not very detailed, but we don't have the details yet. We still, they even discuss in the Storm Prediction Center that we still need to figure out the storm mode. But, as we get into about Tuesday and Wednesday, guys, and then through the weekend, we are going to have an insane record-breaking ridge that builds over the southeast and the eastern U.S. And here it is. This is pretty crazy to see, but you see these really, really orange and red colors right here. That's the stout southeast ridge over the southeast. And when you have this close to an Arctic boundary, this is pumping a lot of moist, warm air into this cold air, and that's why up here, one, you have a big icing issue. This creates a lot of warm air loft. And this is why this is actually helping you folks up here get a winter storm. One, it's kind of driving the storm track north. And two, just like I said, a lot of warm, moist air, which creates moisture. But this is going to be over the entire second half of the week. This is going to dominate the pattern to the weekend. I expect our first really beautiful weekend this coming weekend for the southeast. But here's high temperatures tomorrow. Still above average, but nothing too bad. But I'm not going to talk about each individual state. Y'all guys just freeze the video if y'all need to see Temperatures Monday, look, widespread 70s begin to build in, 80s, widespread 80s into Florida. And then we get into Tuesday. It's a little bit warmer. You start to get 80s breaking out in South Georgia, Alabama, Louisiana. We get into Wednesday. This is when the 80s really start to creep northward. Look at the boundary. Southern sections of the Ohio Valley will be getting well into the 60s, even some low 70s. But if you go over this boundary right here into the Great Lakes region, winter storm. But look, Thursday, widespread 90s I do expect in Florida. Look at these 80s all the way up almost to Washington, D.C. for February 23rd. Widespread 80s all the way up into Tennessee. Okay, this is very, very warm. Atlanta, you'll get into the 80s. Columbia, Charlotte, Asheville, you'll flirt with the 80s. And it'll cool a little bit back down for Friday. But, man, pretty unreal, guys. It's very warm. I think the pollen is going to go absolutely insane next week. So go on and get ready for you folks that suffer with allergies. I think the pollen kicks everybody's butt at least a little bit. But that's all I got, guys. Thank y'all for tuning in and bearing with the low energy. Just a little tired just from running the race today. But I'll be with you guys in the morning. God bless all y'all, and talk to you soon.